True with Guns America, and today we're talking about the biggest news in the gun world. It's Federal's new 7mm Backcountry cartridge. Some people are claiming it's a revolution in cartridges and hunting cartridges for rifles. Other people think it's marketing hype. Today we're going to be jumping into the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between on the new 7mm Backcountry round from Federal. So what is the 7mm Backcountry? Well, it's this cartridge I'm holding in my hand right here, and it's a new cartridge from Federal based on a 100-year-old cartridge design, the 30-06. Well, it's actually older than 100 years, but it's neck down to 7mm, so it's basically a, well, this is a 30-06. This is a 280. It's basically a 280. It's exactly what it is. The case is made of a steel alloy that is nickel plated, and it's designed to withstand over 80,000 psi, which is a lot of pressure. Most of our Magnum cartridges, like for example a 300 Win Mag, are topping out at around 62 or 65,000 psi. Federal claims that you can push a 170 grain bullet out of this new 7mm Backcountry and a 20-inch barrel at 3,000 feet per second. They claim that you can get 3150 out of a 24-inch barrel. Federal is also calling this a non-magnum, which is raising some eyebrows, justifiably so, because of the velocities and the amount of pressure that they're pushing. Let's start by talking about what's good about this cartridge. So the benefits of a 30-06 type cartridge, or that cartridge base, is that it's a narrower, slimmer cartridge, and you could potentially fit one more round in most hunting rifles. So instead of having 3 rounds in your gun, you might have 4. The high pressure is innovative. I certainly believe that this is where we're headed. We haven't really had any sort of innovative technology in small arms in a long time. Our technology is well over 100 years old right now, and so higher pressure is certainly where we're going. Now, short barrel velocity is a big thing. Lots of people are getting suppressors, which is great. We want that. But when you start adding a big, long, heavy suppressor to the end of a 26 or 24-inch barrel, it becomes pretty cumbersome and heavy. And so being able to run a 20 or 22-inch barrel and still getting good velocities is certainly a benefit. So that is a good thing when it comes down to this new cartridge. So Federal is also, this is also a good thing, is claiming that this is reloadable. Now, I've been reloading since I was in high school, and I can tell you that steel cartridges have not been the reloader's best friend. So if it's true that it can be reloaded, I'm surprised, but I guess we'll see what the market shows up with for dies and innovation for reloading this cartridge. So some people are already claiming that Federal has some pretty questionable marketing claims, things like lower recoil. Well, guys, physics works a certain way, and you guys know how that works. We're not going to get into that, but when you start pushing a 170 grain bullet out of a short, light rifle at 3,000 plus feet per second, you're going to have recoil. So there's just no way around that. So I am personally not buying the BS about lower recoil. Bullet going a certain speed out of a light rifle is going to recoil, so I wouldn't buy into that one. The non-magnum thing, also 80,000 psi. Those are magnum those are higher than magnum pressures and velocities. So it's a magnum cartridge despite the marketing spin here. Let's jump into some of the cons, or the things that I'm going to be very critical of on this case. So if you know very much about steel cased ammo, it's sort of got a negative rap for causing malfunctions in AR-15s, for being cheap. Part of the reason for that is that steel does not grip the walls of chambers the same way that brass does. Brass has unique expanding properties that when under pressure, they expand out, they push against the chamber walls, they grip, and it basically makes it so there's less pressure on the bolt. They also seal well, preventing gas and carbon from building up on the inside of your chamber. Well, steel does not expand the same way that brass does, especially hardened steel. And so it's questionable as to whether or not this is going to grip the chamber walls, and whether or not it's going to exert extra pressure back on the bolt face, which granted, most rifles are probably going to be able to take it short term, but long term, it's still up in the air as to whether or not this is really going to work. So when Sig Sauer came out with the 277 Sig Fury, which is this cartridge right here. This is an 80,000 PSI cartridge, so this is basically the same tech that Federal's coming out with in the 7 Backcountry. Here's what's different about the SIG 277 Fury though. This is a hardened steel base on the case made to take all that extra 80,000 PSI pressure, and then they married brass to the case starting right there, and it's brass so that it has the benefits of a brass cartridge that can be reloaded, that grips the case walls, that exerts less pressure and force on the bolt face. Now, one of the things I want to point out about the SIG 277 Fury, I was one of the first people to ever shoot this and hunt with it. I went on a hunt in Colorado with my horses and used this to shoot a 6-point bull before anyone had ever heard of it before. And one of the things that SIG did when they designed this cartridge is that they figured out that, hey, there's really not a rifle on the planet right now that is designed to take 80,000 PSI over and over and over again. So they designed the SIG Cross from the ground up to be able to handle the 80,000 PSI pressures. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because it is of some concern to me that this cartridge is just being chambered in existing rifles that have not been designed to handle these sort of high pressures. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're going to have catastrophic failures and bolts through people's eye. I don't think that's the case. I think Federal did some testing and found out that, hey, they'll handle it. But the question becomes, on a longer term case, after you shoot 100 or 200 rounds, are you going to start to have heavy bolt lift? Are you going to start stretching your lugs? Are you going to start to have galling inside your action and actually ruin actions by shooting this 80,000 PSI cartridge in guns that were not designed to do it? All right. Let's talk about the other problem with the marketing thing here. This cartridge is being marketed as working great in shorter, lighter rifles, which that's the hype. Hey, it's going to get more velocity out of shorter barrels. Here's what they did wrong though. Here's why they did this wrong. They apparently did not talk to shooters, and they created a cartridge that does not fit in short actions. So this is a 30-06 base cartridge, and this is considered a medium action cartridge, which we don't make those anymore really. So what this comes down to is this will not fit in your short action rifle. You have to put this in a long action, which negates some of the shortness of the shorter barrel, meaning you're adding back weight and length because you're using a long action to put this in. I can't help but think how much more awesome it would have been, and obviously I get to sit here and just armchair quarterback this, but how much more awesome it would have been if this had been a 6.5 Creedmoor, and it would have fit in our current existing 6.5 Creedmoor rifles and given us 6.5 PRC velocities out of short actions, or even necked something like that up to 7. Anyway, I wasn't the one that designed it, but that is one of my biggest critiques, is that this was a stupid decision as far as rifle length. This has to go into long action. So now you're really competing with Magnum cartridges, which in my opinion actually get similar velocities to this out of short barrels. So for example, I hunt with a 28 nozzler on a regular basis. I shoot a 180 grain bullet out of a 22-inch barrel at well over 3,000 feet per second. This is shooting a 170 out of a 20 at 3,000. This is gaining nothing over my long action rifle that I'm currently shooting. It's on average about 125 feet per second faster than good factory 7 PRC loads. One of my buddies, his favorite cartridge ever is the 7 Winchester Short Magnum, and he is pushing a 168 grain bullet at 2975 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel. So he's get within 25 feet per second of the advertised velocities of the new 7 Backcountry with an old sort of not even supported 7 Winchester Short Magnum cartridge. One of the other things that concerns me here, and I'm going to talk more about why I'm really concerned about it in a minute, but Federal has had a history of coming out with new cartridges, putting a ton of money and marketing behind them, and then when they don't do super well, dropping support for them. So for example, if you guys don't know about the 224 Valkyrie, it came out and was hyped and marketed as the greatest thing ever in the AR-15 platform, long range, high performance cartridge, and you basically can't find a box of 224 Valkyrie anywhere today. Same thing with the 327 Federal, the 30 Super Carry. Their track record is really not stellar, and there's, I guess the question remains to be seen whether the 7mm Backcountry will suffer the same fate. Recently, Federal, CCI, Spear, Heavy Shot, and Remington ammunition were sold to the Czech group. I believe the sale went through on December 12th, 2024, so just a short time ago. that raises some real questions for how much support is going to be here on this cartridge. I want to read to you what Senator J.D. Vance, now our Vice President, actually had to say about this acquisition. So this is his letter written on his United States Senate letterhead. It was written to the, well, I'll just read it. It says, I'm going to read a couple portions. Dear Secretary Yellen, I write to you in your capacity as chair of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States to express my serious concern about the sale of Vista Outdoor Sporting Products business to Czechoslovakia Group, or CSG, a business with a long record of wrongdoing and well-documented connections to America's adversaries. The transaction poses apparent risks to our national security. I urge you to initiate a full security review of the transaction and use every authority to mitigate the risks it poses. The dangers posed by the sale are not due to the transaction's size or the consolidation of market power. However, CSG or Czech Group has a long and troubling record that should raise national security concerns, especially alleged ties to the inner circle of Russian President Vladimir Putin. It has been publicly reported that CSG sponsored an exhibition in Moscow to help Russian authorities secure European military technologies, and has engaged with prominent Russian organizations like Putin's regime. It has also recently been sued in Delaware State Court for its alleged ties to Russian interests. In addition, experts and journalists have repeatedly sounded the alarm on CSG's reckless arms sales and industrial espionage, including acquisitions of industrial espionage against the Slovakian military and violations of the arms embargo to Azerbaijan. And then he goes, and I'm skipping some stuff here, but he goes on and says, we cannot afford for America's supply of weapons to fall into the wrong hands. The CFI-US process is a critical tool to keep the American people safe from enemies who seek to exploit our domestic vulnerabilities. Until it can be proven that this transaction will not jeopardize our national security, I respectfully urge you to deny the sale of Vista Outdoor Sporting Product business to the Czech Group. Thank you for your efforts to safeguard American national security. Folks, that was ignored. That sale went through December 12th. So Federal and this new Backcountry cartridge are owned by the CSG Group. I have no idea what their priorities are for the American hunting market. This has been in process for a long time, and so it went ahead and launched. But, you know, time will only tell whether they actually will support this. And honestly, the question comes up whether or not we should be supporting this as well. A couple other things here that are still unknowns. 80,000 PSI out of a cartridge with this much powder. What's that going to do to barrel life, throat erosion? Still kind of an unknown. We're going to have to get some people putting some round down range and test it to start to figure that out. We're certainly going to have more muzzle blast, more flash. If we're hunt and suppress, that should negate some of that. And then the last thing here are the warranty concerns with this. Who is going to warranty your rifle if after 100 rounds you break a lug off, or you have stretch in your lugs, or you have heavy bolt lift all the time? Is it going to be Federal that warranties that for creating a cartridge that they didn't fully test, or insist that manufacturers design rifles that could handle these pressures from the ground up? Or is it going to be the manufacturer that has to warranty these cartridges or these rifles that are shooting a cartridge that they were never designed to shoot? Gray area. I have no idea what to tell you, but I'm a little skeptical of how it's going to work. So I do want to point out though, and give Federal the credit, this is the direction we need to be going in. If we want to have better cartridges, better rifles, we're going to have to up the pressure. Let's hope that we get some rifle manufacturers out there. I know Seekins is making them, obviously SIG is, but that are designing rifles from the ground up to handle higher pressure cartridges. Now, I would like to see some cartridges though that fit on existing chambering, so that, for example, my 6.5 Creedmoor, I don't have to go invest in a new cartridge to see if it works. Meaning, if this had been a 6.5 Creedmoor, I could have dropped it right in and had 6.5 PRC velocities without having to be a guinea pig with my money. So I hope that Federal is listening and that they'll pay attention, and if they are going to support this and really go through with this, that they will offer some cartridges that are, I guess, existing already. I mean, imagine just a 308 6.5, or imagine a 6.5 PRC, which fits in a short action. Got one of those right here, necked up to 7. Man, imagine what we could have done with that. Maybe even more case capacity, more velocity, who knows. This is the 7 PRC, which is really what we're trying to compare against here and compete with. And as you can see, yeah, it's If this is a long skinny cartridge, this is a short fat cartridge. They both have to go in a long action, which negates the shorter barrel thing. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think about the 7 Backcountry. If you're one of those people that loves having the latest, greatest, innovative tech, and you're going to go right out and buy one, tell me about it. Tell me this is what you've been waiting for. I want to hear if there's points that I missed. If there's things that I didn't even think of, by all means, stick them in the comments. Let's hear your thoughts and opinions. Love to hear it. Let's be respectful. You know, it's not easy to come out with new products, and Federal's put a lot of money behind this, so I'm certainly not here to bag them today, but I do have concerns, and I'm hearing a lot of marketing hype, and I'm personally not buying it. Tell us what you think. Guys, if you appreciate the video, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you on the next one.